Sonic X Comic Issue 26. We start out with Chris cheering for what has to be Eggman on TV, dressed up as a Spanish wrestler. To be fair, at least he's wearing a mask to cover the upper half of his face and nose, and he's not wearing sunglasses. Plus, he's a human, and there's plenty of those in the world. But still, he's a guy with a mustache just like Eggman's. Wouldn't that be pointed out, at least? Wouldn't they subconsciously not want to root for him? Get a bad feeling from him? Assume he's an Eggman fanboy, even? What I like about how Sonic's not impressed is the implication that he's just jealous that they're cheering for someone other than him. Sonic somehow knows that wrestling is fake, while Chris idiotically insists that it's not. I feel like this is a terrible stereotype of wrestling fans. My parents are big wrestling fans, and they admit that wrestling is scripted, no problem. What's these guys' excuse? Seriously, how would Sonic know that wrestling is fake already? Did he do research on the internet? He's new to this world. Then after Sonic surprisingly points out right away that this is Eggman in disguise, Flynn rates Chris to have a huge out-of-character moment by grabbing him under the arm and making Sonic hold his neck in pain afterwards. What was he thinking? Did he hate Chris just as much as the audience did? If Chris was acting this abusive all the time, then the fans would be justified in hating him. Instead, I only hate the focus on him, and the fact that he stole the kid best friend role from Tails, while Chuck stole the engineering role from Tails. Though Tails still does engineering, but it doesn't matter because Chuck does it too. So, Tails is just boring as fuck and only exists to be the ring thrower, while Sonic has no dynamic with him at all. That's what I hate about Chris. Chuck has to play the mediator and pull the two apart, while Chris still looks uncharacteristically mad. And Chris brags about how his father got him only 2 tickets, and so Sonic can't go see the wrestling match. Immediately, it should be obvious to the entire crowd that it's Eggman because his robots are clearly right beside him. The paper-thin disguise trope should die in a fire. I could understand if he shapeshifted himself, or if he had a brainwashing ray that, for the sake of balance, was only capable of making people think that he was someone he wasn't. This could easily have been justified, and that's what's most frustrating of all. Surprisingly, one of his robot sidekicks punches him. Or wait, no, they weren't that gutsy, never mind. Instead, he just pulled Eggman's mask off, when it kind of looks like he smacked him with the way Eggman's head is rearing from it and the motion blur is there. And the robot has one of his fists to the left of him. Besides, it would have been out of character for Deco to do. This is why I like seeing things in motion a lot better. Anyways, Deco tells Eggman he has no prowess because it's all a trick. He designed some nanobots to look like sequins, which get all over his opponents and create a negatively charged field while the positively charged super magnet the robots hit under the ring pulls them to the ground. Well, it's kind of disappointing that he's cheating, and I completely forgot about this part when I was reading out the script of the review. This is much more creative and much more of a twist, actually, than Eggman winning normally. And it takes advantage of his engineering skills. I mean, it's definitely a twist since I forgot all about it. I am disappointed that Eggman's not really winning by being big and strong, since he looks like he is, and that's why I thought this wrestling idea was brilliant for him. Because for once, it's taking advantage of the fact that he's big, without being just another fat joke. But since he hasn't been a professional wrestler, it makes sense that someone with no athletic wrestling skill at all would have to cheat to win against the experts, because the experts would be big and strong, and would have actual skill. The problem is, like Sonic said, professional wrestling is staged. It's more like a soap opera with the actors doing their own stunts. So if this was actually carried out in the story, instead of just being a throwaway line to break the fourth wall by reminding you of real life, Eggman wouldn't be able to get away with breaking the script and winning if he's not allowed to. Good writing would establish why he's allowed to win all the time without being fired for breaking the script every time. Either he was popular with the audience right away thanks to his confidence and hamminess giving him charisma, or he bribed or threatened the people in charge to let him win all the time. And at that point, what's the point of him cheating using electronics when he shouldn't have to? Eggman naturally points out that he's showing off both his mental and physical prowess, and his robot sidekicks stand up to him, complaining about having to wear disguises. Why are they programmed to talk to him this way, and why aren't they being punished or reprogrammed for it? Is the Ergo problem before Ergo was thought up? Eggman's already a laughing stock. so it's overkill to have even his robots act this way. Why would he program his robots to make fun of him? Bokun startles them, complaining about how loud they are, and he's told that all the sugar from swimming in cotton candy will warp his brain. Will he be the Chekhov's gunman from his sugar rush? This writer really does suck at not being predictable sometimes, because I immediately ask that question. It's interesting that Scarlet Garcia is blushing at seeing Eggman, especially considering all of the jokes in Sonic F about how Eggman has a crush on her and keeps calling her and won't leave her alone, and he says that he'll have her yet. It turns out Sonic has challenged Eggman for the wrestling match. I guess because he really wants to be the one that Chris likes instead. Knuckles, what are you doing outside of Angel Island? Just because the games make this mistake doesn't mean it's okay for Flynn to mimic that problem. Who's guarding the Emerald? He was very stubborn about doing so earlier in the comic. It could be so easy to solve this. Just say that either he keeps the Emerald shrunken in his shoe, and Tails could have a shrink ray built no problem, or explain that he has a giant guard robot to guard it, or he buries it. That's what's frustrating about this. I'm fine with him not guarding the Emerald himself, so he can actually be used in actual story, instead of just being on Angel Island all the time, because that's boring as shit. But just explain it properly then. Anyways, Knuckles is written as Sonic's harsh wrestling coach, as we see both Sonic and Eggman doing push-ups, with the gold robot all frantic because he knows Sonic will win, and with me being confused that Knuckles isn't just doing this in front of the Master Emerald. I hope Orbot is the smart and Sonic Boom. It would suit him since he's the sophisticated, mild-mannered butler type. But yeah, it's really weird to see Sonic passively putting up with Knuckles being harsh to him like this. Knuckles even yells at Sonic through a megaphone like a drill sergeant while Sonic's playing jump rope, which has nothing to do with the stupid wrestling match. Sonic doesn't end up yelling at Knuckles for going overboard with him at the end, like would make sense. Instead, as I wonder why Sonic the Hedgehog would ever think he has a chance against big, strong wrestlers and even consider this ridiculous idea, Bokun looks over the city from above and says that one day it'll all be his. That makes me think that he'd be an interesting major villain. He'd be like Kefka or the Joker if he looked like a strange mixture of cute and literally demonic. He could be a super naive, childlike villain with a weakness for sugar, like he always is. But if he was in a much more threatening role, he could be pretty scary. He could be super sadistic and laughing maniacally. But Bokun hasn't shown himself to be that evil, actually. He's not really sadistic. Sure, he sent bombs at the heroes in the anime every time he gives them a message from Eggman, but you'll notice that the bombs never injure them. They just cover them in soot. So he might be going easy on them, making bombs that are actually not that bad, and he just wants to scare them for a prank. He could be a super threatening character, the unexpected threat, but I think he's only working for Eggman because he's a naive kid who doesn't know any better. Anyways, after Sonic gets covered with the nanobots in the ring, he struggles to stand up in spite of them trying to push him down with a magnet, and he somehow manages to jump from the floor, because creator's pet powers, and pull Eggman's cape over him so that he gets covered in the nanobots too. How did he do that? Logically, he should have stayed pinned to the floor. Why did the other wrestlers do that at that point? He doesn't say that it's because he's so fast that the sheer force of him moving is fast enough to make him jump up from the floor regardless of a magnet. Also, if the sequence pulled people down before Eggman even gets a chance to physically pin them down himself, you'd think it would have been made obvious that he was cheating right from the first match. Can Chris seriously not hear Sonic and Eggman talking to each other? He just says they're staring each other down, and the fight looks intense. Something chewed through the power cord, which confuses the robots and Knuckles. It was probably Bokun. Because of this, Sonic fights Eggman. However, because Eggman begs Sonic to let him stay as their hero instead of taking off his mask in front of Chris, Sonic has a soft side and lets Eggman keep his persona. He even shakes his hand first. Eggman says that the winner is Sonic, so that's good. Sonic doesn't outright humiliate himself by letting Eggman win in the fight, though that would have made actual sense, especially considering he just begged him to let him keep his persona. It is smart of Eggman to let someone win for once, in the sense that he can't be accused of cheating to win every time if he lets someone win. Bokun watches the show, says that he's disappointed that Eggman's leaving with his dignity, and he wears a cape and fake facial hair, and says that the Empire will be his now. The whole appeal of Bokun is that he's a cute kid villain, and a robot at that, and yet he looks kind of demonic too, so that's a unique thing there. But yeah, I'm really proud of the comic here. They'll actually go with my idea here and make Bokun more of a threat. He looks like he could be most of the time. He certainly looks more threatening than the robot sidekicks. This issue is by Ian Flynn. It was about Eggman cheating to win wrestling matches. Surprisingly, Sonic doesn't reveal his true identity at the end because the writer wants to have a story arc about it. I mean, because he doesn't want to disappoint Chris, and Eggman loves the fame and adoration of being regarded as their idol. It's like Boom Eggman, where all he really wants is to be loved. It's a brilliant twist on Robotnik for once. What he doesn't realize is that eventually the fickle audience would turn on him anyways because they get tired of him winning every time and stop seeing him as the underdog. So it's doomed from the start. And Eggman winning despite not being a professionally trained wrestler is properly explained. It's because he gets nanobot sequence on his opponents and a magnet pins them to the floor. But the fact that Sonic said something was pinning him down and fell to the floor before Eggman pinned him down by himself should have made it immediately obvious that when he was accusing him of cheating afterwards, he was right. I assumed Eggman had been revealed for a fraud to the audience right then and there, but instead, everyone in the audience was blind and deaf and didn't get what was going on. That's always stupid. It was also really stupid how Flynn made Chris a horribly out-of-character brat to Sonic at one point. On the one hand, it's nice to see him show a flaw for the first time that's not something as pointless as being shy in a talk show or being clingy, but this is going overboard. It makes him look like he has some anger issues. It's off-putting to see Chris looking angry. It would have been better if they explained it as he has pent-up resentment for his parents because they barely spent any time with him, so he lashed out at Sonic over misdirected anger that he bottled up too long. That's why he overreacted. It wasn't just about that. But explaining that would be good writing. So instead, it's just what it looks like. Speaking of out-of-character moments, why wasn't Knuckles guarding the Master Emerald? Knuckles could have easily trained Sonic in front of the Master Emerald. And why was Sonic perfectly fine with putting up with him here instead of arrogantly insisting he doesn't need any training? That was just padding, and an out-of-character moment caused padding. This OC thing is nothing new for Flynn though. Treasure Team Taiko was all about that. There are other writers that get the characters wrong at times, but Flynn's the most major example of this because he's not a professional. He's a Sonic fan they hired. He's the only writer in Archie who immediately springs to mind as having out-of-character moments for the characters. He has derailed dozens of characters after all, so it's not surprising that this unusual OC weirdness was by him. I'd expect Chris holding Sonic with his arm around his neck out of a fanfiction that demonizes him. While it's novel to have Sonic be the butt monkey for a change, this goes too far. It was already bad enough that he had Amy running after him to pinch him earlier. Twice. Chris is usually a nice kid, and Sonic doesn't reflect on this behavior at all as uncharacteristic and lampshaded, and Chuck doesn't react to it properly either. But at least it makes me kind of interested in Chris for once by showing a negative side to him. I love that ending, especially with Bokun at the end. Although he'll probably only be acting this way for one issue later, and it'll probably only be because of a sugar rush, and thus Flynn will completely waste the idea instead of making a better status quo because he's a terrible writer with no guts, and you know it's bad when you're cynical and then you're immediately proven right. That's not a good sign.